Errol Spence Jr. doesn't talk, he terrifies. Quiet, precise, ruthless. In a sport built on chaos and noise, Spence brings cold calculation and leaves broken ribs behind. While others sold hype, the truth delivered hurt. No gimmicks, no drama, just surgical jabs and soul-snatching body shots. They said he was too quiet to rule, too clean to conquer, until he walked into enemy territory and took Kell Brook's belt like it was owed. Now, they don't just respect him, they fear him. Unified world champion. He cruises through Texas in a blacked-out Rolls-Royce, wrist gleaming with ice, legacy etched in every mile. A man built on discipline, powered by precision, and backed by millions in the bank. From Olympic rings to world titles, Spence turned silence into greatness and pain into power. So, before we dive into the rise, the wreck, and the ruthless legacy of Errol Spence Jr., smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell like it's round one. Let's get started. Born on March 3rd, 1990, in Long Island, New York, he wasn't born into glory. He had to fight for every ounce of it. Raised in the heartbeat of Dallas, he comes from a blend of cultures. Jamaican roots through his father, African-American strength through his mother. That dual heritage shaped him, grounding him in both grit and pride. Before the world called him the truth, he was just a disciplined young man chasing something few ever touch: greatness. In the amateur ranks, he carved out his reputation early. With 3 consecutive U.S. national championships under his belt and a trip to the 2012 London Olympics, he stood toe-to-toe with the world's best. He didn't return with a medal, but he came back with something even more dangerous: hunger. A hunger to prove that he belonged, not just among the elite, but at the very top. That fire would carry him to 2017, where he traveled across the Atlantic and broke down Kell Brook in his own backyard to claim the IBF welterweight title. From there, his rise was relentless. He unified the division by edging out Shawn Porter in a brutal 2019 slugfest, just months before fate nearly stole everything in a devastating car crash. Many thought it was over, but Spence came back, scarred, but sharper than ever, defeating Danny Garcia and later crushing Yordenis Ugas to add the WBA title. By 2023, all roads led to Terence Crawford, a battle of unbeaten kings. As of 2025, his net worth stands at $15 million, a testament to what resilience, raw talent, and the heart of a warrior can build. But the question remains, after everything he's endured, is Errol Spence Jr. still chasing greatness? Or has he already caught it? Before the bright lights and title belts, there was a teenage boy in DeSoto, Texas, learning to channel quiet intensity into something powerful. Boxing didn't just catch his interest, it gave him purpose. By 15, he was already a fixture in the gym, molding raw instincts into disciplined skill. His rise through the amateur ranks was swift but hard-earned. With 3 consecutive U.S. national titles and a strong showing at the 2012 London Olympics. Even in defeat, Spence had shown he belonged among the sport's elite. He left the amateur world not as a boy with potential, but as a man ready to conquer. On November 9th, 2012, in the small glare of Fantasy Springs Casino, he made his professional debut. The opponent, Jonathan Garcia, never stood a chance. Spence stopped him in the 3rd round, and in doing so, declared not just his arrival, but his intention. There was nothing flashy about it. No grandstanding. Just ruthless precision and frightening calm. That pattern would define the early part of his pro journey. With each fight, the storm gathered strength. Victories over the likes of Javier Castro, Samuel Vargas, and Chris Van Heerden weren't just wins. They were warnings. He dismantled opponents like a surgeon with a sledgehammer. Never rushed, never reckless. He was methodical, cold, brilliant. When he went the distance for the first time against Emmanuel Larty, he didn't flinch. He dominated every round, reminding the world that knockouts were just one part of his arsenal. By 2014, the spotlight started following him. In Las Vegas, under the lights of his Showtime debut, Spence put on a clinic against Ronald Cruz, walking him down with patient aggression and flawless fundamentals. Then came Phil Lo Greco, Chris Algieri, and Alejandro Barrera, each dismantled with increasing ease and growing power. The IBF took notice. Barrera was the eliminator fight, and Spence didn't just win, he erased him in 5 brutal rounds. The message was clear. He was no longer hunting contenders. He was hunting champions. The final hurdle to a title shot came in the form of Leonard Bundu, a tough, experienced veteran. In front of a record-breaking 6.34 million television viewers, Spence delivered a 6th-round uppercut, so clean the referee didn't even bother with a count. That fight didn't just secure his shot, it made him a star. For the first time in years, a welterweight from America had the country's full attention. That attention would follow him across the Atlantic to the steel and fury of Sheffield, England, where IBF champion Kell Brook waited. On May 27, 2017, he walked into enemy territory with nothing but his fists and an unshakable belief in himself. The fight was brutal, 11 rounds of punishing back and forth. Brook fought like a champion, but Spence broke him down piece by piece, forcing him to take a knee and surrender in the 11th. The silence that followed was louder than any cheer. The kid from Texas had taken the crown, and he hadn't just survived the moment. He had owned it. But gold doesn't satisfy a true fighter. It only makes him hungrier. Lamont Peterson was next, gritty, battle-tested, and known for his heart. Spence dismantled him so thoroughly that Peterson's corner threw in the towel after the 7th. Carlos Ocampo followed, folded by a body shot in the very first round. These weren't just title defenses. They were statements. He wasn't just a champion, he was becoming the champion. Then came the night of March 16, 2019. AT&T Stadium. Mikey Garcia, a 4-division world champion, moved up in weight to test the welterweight king. What followed was a masterpiece in discipline and technique. Spence didn't chase a knockout. He outboxed a master boxer, landing 345 punches to Garcia's 75. The fight wasn't violent. It was humiliating for Garcia. The message? Spence wasn't just a puncher. He was a technician, a tactician, a complete fighter. But the war against Shawn Porter later that year would be the fight that defined his fire. September 28, 2019. Staples Center. Shawn Porter didn't come to box. He came to brawl. He made it messy, wild, and relentless. But Spence didn't back down. He stood in the fire, toe-to-toe, trading bombs for 12 brutal rounds in a war of will and grit. Then, in round 11, Spence found the difference maker. A left hook that dropped Porter and tipped the scorecards just enough to unify the IBF and WBC belts. No one walked away unscarred that night, but only one walked away champion. 12 days later, everything nearly vanished. October 10th, 2019. A Ferrari flipped, a body thrown from the wreck, and silence. The kind of silence that ends careers or lives. Spence didn't just survive, he came back. And not in some padded tune-up fight. In December 2020, he stepped into the ring with Danny Garcia, a top-tier contender. For 12 rounds, he looked sharp, focused, unbroken. He hadn't just returned, he had returned better. The myth had survived reality. Then, in April 2022, another unification. This time, against Yordenis Ugas, the man who had just retired Manny Pacquiao. Spence was hurt in the 6th, but instead of folding, he responded like a true champion, biting down, walking forward, and breaking Ugas down until the referee waved it off in the 10th. The WBA belt was his. Now, 3 titles sat on one waist. One name was left, Terence "Bud" Crawford. July 29, 2023. T-Mobile Arena. A clash that had simmered for years. 2 undefeated kings stepping into the ring, not just for belts, but for the crown. One night, one throne. No more questions. But from the first bell, something was different. Crawford wasn't just fast. He was surgical. The second round knockdown stunned everyone. Spence never found his rhythm. By the 7th, the swelling around his eyes matched the weight on his shoulders. When the 9th round stoppage came, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a funeral for an era. And yet, even in that heartbreak, there was something unshakably noble about Spence. He had taken every challenge, walked through every fire, and never once ducked a man. He was beaten, yes, but never broken. His record now reads 28 wins, 1 loss, 22 knockouts. A former unified world champion, a survivor. But now the story shifts, not to belts or glory, but to something deeper. Because the question is no longer, can Errol Spence Jr. become great? It's, can he rise again? And who is he beyond the gloves? When the lights fade and the cameras stop rolling, Spence isn't the Punisher from the ring. He's a father, a son, a man trying to protect his peace while carrying the weight of expectation. But it's fatherhood that truly reveals the man behind the champion. He has 3 children, 2 daughters and a son who carries not just his name, but his legacy. They are his world, his anchor, and his reason to fight beyond the ring. He rarely speaks publicly about them, but when he does, his voice softens. In between training camps and title bouts, it's the quiet moments with his kids, school runs, bedtime stories, playful laughter, that keep him human. By his side is Deborah, his longtime partner, a private force in his life. She runs a boutique quietly and stays away from the noise. He never tags her online, not out of secrecy, but out of protection. Fame may be loud, but love for Spence is sacred. After the 2019 car crash that nearly ended it all, it wasn't trainers or promoters that pulled him through. It was his family, his parents, his children, the people who knew him before the world did. And now, as he steps into the final chapters of his career, another question looms. Not about who he fights next, but who he becomes next. Outside the ring, away from the roar. Can Errol Spence Jr. find peace in the silence? At 2:53 a.m. on a quiet October night in 2019, everything changed. Errol Spence Jr., undefeated, untouchable, the pride of Dallas, was thrown from his speeding Ferrari as it flipped violently through the air. No seatbelt, no warning, no reason he should have survived. When the crushed shell of the car finally came to rest, so did the illusion of invincibility. He woke up in the ICU, battered but alive. No broken bones, just scars on his face, on his record, and on his spirit. He posted, "No broken bones, I'm a savage." But the world didn't cheer. It winced. Because behind that bravado was a truth harder to face. Errol Spence had been drinking. And he wasn't just lucky to be alive. He was lucky no one else had died. The accident shook him, but didn't stop him. Months later, he was hit again, this time in his G-Wagon, blindsided by another driver. And again, in December 2022, when a 14-year-old, joyriding in his parents' car, slammed into him head-on. 3 accidents. 1 man, still standing, still fighting. But what happens when life keeps hitting harder than any opponent? He began building something more lasting than title reigns. Real estate, a clothing line, a restaurant, a sports management company, man down promotions to mentor the next generation. These weren't just side hustles. They were shields. Proof that if the ring ever faded, he wouldn't. In the silence of recovery and reflection, Spence found a different kind of power. The power to build, to mentor, and to endure. But as the final act approaches, a haunting question lingers like the smell of burning rubber after a crash. What price has he truly paid to still be standing? For a man who's walked through fire and lived to tell it, Errol Spence Jr. doesn't just survive. He celebrates life at full throttle. In DeSoto, Texas, behind the gates of his quiet estate, Spence has carved out a sanctuary for himself and his children. A sprawling mansion with sleek modern lines and warm family echoes. It's not just a home, it's a fortress. One built not with bricks, but with blood, sweat, and belt after belt. But step outside that front door and you'll find something else. Something that says more about Spence's soul than any room inside. The driveway isn't just a stretch of pavement. It's a personal pit lane. His Ferrari 458 Italia, painted in racing red, isn't just a car. It's a symphony of speed. 562 horses beneath its hood, a machine that can go from 0 to 60 in under 3.3 seconds. It's the kind of car that demands your respect and your full attention. The same way Spence demands in the ring. Next to it sits a Lamborghini Gallardo, all angles and attitude, with a V10 engine that growls like a wild animal caged too long. It's not just about flash. It's a reflection of controlled chaos, of raw power tamed by precision. Just like him. And there are others. American muscle, German engineering, custom interiors. Each car tells a story, some of survival, some of indulgence, all of defiance. These aren't just vehicles. They're trophies of a man who could have lost it all, but still chose to live fast and drive faster. Even his casual wear tells the same story. Custom Crocs with his kids' names, his fight record, his motto etched in rubber. A man grounded in family, but forever drawn to the edge. But beyond the engines and gold-plated comforts, what's left when the crowd fades and the garage goes quiet? Can Spence slow down before the road takes him with it? Before you go, don't miss out on exclusive perks. Click the link in the description to become a channel member and enjoy awesome benefits, like suggesting future video topics, getting early access to new content 48 hours before anyone else, and much more. Your support means the world and helps us keep bringing you the stories you love. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more amazing content. And while you're here, why not check out our deep dive into Daniel Dubois' video? Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.